Today, we're joined by somebody whose journey through event technology has been nothing short of remarkable. Adam Jones, the now CEO of FFAIR, joins me. Adam, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Adam.
You first started Showplans and now FFAIR. I would say a new vision of maybe experience that you've had before. And I think the conversation today that I would love to have with you is about your journey through that. Bit of a masterclass in entrepreneurship. You obviously didn't get burned enough the first time round to think of not doing it again the second time. But I'd love to look at the evolution, staying ahead of the curve, because I do think you have done that with FFAIR. It's, in my opinion, arguably the best exhibitor shop experience piece of technology for event organisers and operations teams on the market. Others are going to probably shoot me down and hate me in the comments for that. But before we dive into all of that, how did you get started in the events industry? And let's talk a little bit about that journey into Showplans and then touch on the journey into FFAIR.
So my background was industrial design, so finished my degree, and I wanted to be a shoe dog. I wanted to design shoes. So all of my courses,
Jordan Dunks and things like that?
Exactly like that.
Okay.
Football boots, whatever it was. So part of my final course was to design a laceless football boot, which was exciting for me, and I wanted to get into that and do more of it. So buying myself time, I knew AutoCAD, and a job popped up with AutoCAD, so I selected a job by the software that I knew, just to buy me time to find the job I wanted, but ended up not carrying on looking. And I could see this opportunity in events being almost like an untapped thing. I'd never heard of the events industry.
Was that the first company you went to work with, an event company then, or an event supplier?
It was, yeah. So it was a company called SMS Group.
Yeah, okay.
And they provided services from freelance ops to stand plan inspections to health and safety, and they had a floor plan department. So I joined that floor plan department, and it was quite strange because the floor plan department was a free service. So they would offer, sorry, it wasn't a free service. They were charging for something. Sorry.
Bundled.
Not even that, actually. We were competing against the likes of GES, who were offering a free service, and I couldn't quite get my head around why anyone would offer something that required skill for free. So we were competing against a free service, and we had to offer something slightly more, and that was through better design, considered design, and thinking more than just how many squares can we get on this page. We started thinking about the journey, the optimization of optimal stand spaces, and trying to create more desirable stand spaces. So it was an interesting job, and I remember looking at their You Are Here boards and thinking, crikey, they are terrible. And I'd obviously come off a course where we knew 3D Studio Max and everything's rendered to the nines and looked really beautiful. So that was an opportunity for me to influence something, and it felt quite exciting. So I kind of forgot my shoe dog days, and that was
Beautiful
was kind of
floor plans was the future.
Beautiful floor plans were the future. Yeah, 3D rendering. But I worked there for 5 years, and then 2008 hit.
Financial crash kind of time.
Financial crash, exactly that. And our department was profitable, but the rest of the team wasn't. What seemed to be happening was exhibitors were exhibiting, but they were exhibiting in a much smaller way. Yeah. So rather than taking a massive 20 by 20 stand, they were committing to a 3 by 3, and that had a massive knock-on effect. So I think that SMS tried to continue, but got to the point where they were not viable, and the business was being closed down. And it was one of those times where you think, okay, well, what's my next option? Do I start looking for jobs again, or do I take this opportunity to do something and take control of it? So business went under. We started kind of formulating the idea of building a business. So this was me and my co-founder Richard Dove, and we knew that we couldn't really start a business by doing exactly what we wanted to do. There were some stepping stones to get there. First, I had to sell my car. So
you'll have to make sacrifices.
Absolutely. Sold my car, bought a CAD license, bought a computer that could run it.
Was it a one-for-one exchange at that point?
Almost. Yeah, it was. My pride and joy. But that then meant that we could provide the service.
Yeah.
So we could provide a service, and people were coming to us asking to design floor plans and maximize sellable space, and that was probably the most rewarding personally time for me financially, because we didn't have any staff, we didn't have any overheads, so it was kind of no overheads, so it was almost pure profit. And then,
would you have classed yourself like as a micro SaaS? No, I guess you were just doing the CAD plans at that point. This was before the actual technology piece, was it?
Yeah, this is before the technology piece. So it was more of a let's to get to that point, we've got to make some money to actually be able to hire someone to build something. It was always in our plan, because we'd kind of raised the subject at SMS Group, and me being me and entrepreneurial, I was always kind of having those conversations with the owner of the business, going, look, people want to manage their own floor plans. They don't want to come to us and pay for a service. They want to be able to do it themselves. And I was always shot down at that point. But running our own business was really obvious. We could only serve, with two of us, we could only serve about 15 customers.
Right.
So the obvious thing for me was to build that software product that I'd been banging on about. But it's easier to do or it's harder to do when it's your own money. So I completely empathize with the previous boss and why he didn't.
You can spend a lot of money, can't you, down a rabbit hole, thinking you're building the right thing, and then hurdles and other things get in the roadway, and all of a sudden you're 2x what you originally thought, and you're halfway along the project, and things, it can get out of control quite quickly, can't it?
It can do, but I think the learnings from that, I couldn't overspend. The money wasn't there to overspend, so everything I did had to be on a budget, and it had to be on time, and it had to be almost first time. There was if we hadn't done that, the business wouldn't have gone anywhere. And I've kind of taken that same approach with FFAIR when we're developing things. It's not a bottomless pocket. It's still my money that I'm investing in it, but I've got slightly more than a Mitsubishi FTO's worth of money to put into it. So
you can tell it looks better.
Yeah, it does look a bit better. But I never set out to run a business. This is the interesting thing for me, is if you had asked me at 25, do you ever want to run a business? The answer would have been no. It would have been more of a glamour job, working for Nike or working for Adidas or someone like that. That would have been kind of what my goal was. But that push to kind of make a decision was really what got me into it. That kind of decision then to go, right, let's stop taking the profits from this and kind of paying ourselves. Let's start spending it on actually building a software product. And I didn't know how to build software at that point. I knew how to solve problems and I knew how to design products, but software wasn't something that's really taught on an industrial design course. The principles are very similar. The project management is quite similar. So I needed to find a person who knew how to code. And then I needed to quickly learn how to manage that person who coded, because they're not your normal people in the nicest
skill
possible
set in
way.
itself, right? Yeah,
it is. So I was learning on the job, really, assuming I could just let someone roam free and build something, and didn't really work out that way. So I've forgotten what your question is.
Just let's talk a little bit more about Showplans. So at what point did you take that product to market? And I guess let's talk about key milestones as you scaled that business, like, from concept to, I guess, micro SaaS beta to then ultimately, let's be very honest about it, and we'll kind of come on to this bit later, but you ultimately got acquired by probably one of the largest organizations at the time in the events industry, Freeman. So I think there's a whole story piece there which very much plays into FFAIR and stuff like that. But let's roll back for a second. What were some of the key milestones you remember of you starting to get Showplans out into the wild and into the hands of those customers?
So after launching the product, it's a series of challenges running a business, and there are a series of challenges I hadn't foreseen, and I was definitely naive. So I think the first milestone was obviously getting our existing customers to use a piece of software. And I remember our first demo with one of our clients who was using the service, and our demo had a spelling mistake in it, had a typo in it, and we're in a boardroom full of 20 people, and they went, "You spelt floor plan wrong." Like the only word that we couldn't spell
How
wrong.
Could you even possibly spell your own company name wrong?
Oh,
I don't know.
I don't know, mate. I'm not sure. So that was kind of funny side story, but
did that win them over? Did it actually relax the mood a little bit?
We did get them on board. But something as simple as a typo almost lost us that.
Then maybe there's a tactic in itself like that. He could have lost it, but did it break the ice and actually got everybody's guard down and much more relaxed about it?
No, there was no positive.
Okay.
I like the spin, but there was no. Yeah, it actually kind of then made them think that the idea was half baked. If we're making spelling mistakes in the demo, what about how bad is the product going to be? So
that's going to show to our customers and things like that as well. Yeah,
exactly. So it was a wake up call, really. And how we presented it was really important. And I take that through to kind of now our demos are probably the most important thing. And people are probably tired of me and my company, but you've got to be demo ready. If you're selling software, the demo is probably your one time where you make or break.
And can I ask you, do you lead on demos, or do you now have a team of people or an individual that leads on demos, or is that something you even outsource? Because I know some companies will outsource a demo to other organizations, won't they?
Interesting.
Maybe it's not as complex technology as yours. Is something simple?
Maybe it's funny because I've only just handed over demos to other people. Yeah. So I only recently hired a salesperson, and luckily they were a customer of ours and knew how to use the product on a day-to-day. So the benefits to the customer were obvious to him, and he could actually kind of call that out and tell the story almost immediately. So that was kind of a massive learning curve that we didn't have to take. But up until that point, I'd been doing the demos. So 4 years of doing demos. But still, it's almost a performance. You're saying the same thing almost every day, telling the same jokes, and trying to leave a memorable element that they're gonna take away with them.
And I guess is that because realistically, like most discovery calls from a sales perspective, we're talking about demos here, but when we're talking about the sales processes, you're trying to find out the challenges, but the challenges that your customer face are always the same or very similar challenges every step of the way. So your demo is formulaic. That might not be the right way to present it, but there's like it follows a flow, and you get from point A to point B, hitting those challenges and how the platform overcomes them. Am I understanding that right?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of SaaS companies will have that discovery call where they're trying to find out what the problems are. I have a slightly different spin on it. I tell them my story of why I decided to start FFAIR, and that story is so close to their experience and their customers' experience. Almost don't need to ask those questions.
I know you have these challenges.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you kind of talk them through the things that you struggled with when I exhibited at shows, and I say I completed the wrong form, and that form took me 2.5 hours, and it was soul destroying. And that's something that everyone goes through. Organisers chasing people for information, and that being the predominant part of their job. These are all things that they know, and we know. That's probably because it's a niche product. I think if we had a broader spectrum of products, then obviously we've got to investigate what's the best product, but we've got one in reality. So milestones. So I think getting our first customers on board, it's that whole life cycle of onboarding customers. You've got your innovators, your early adopters, then you go into your followers. And we were quite lucky that we had a captive audience, and we had customers that we could go to from day one, because when we opened up the business, actually before we opened up the business, a lot of people were telling us to start the business. And that was obviously a good catalyst for us to take that leap of faith. And we had some fairly big organisers calling, going, look, if you open this business, you have a customer. So when we got to the point where we actually had a software product, we could open the door to lots of big clients. So getting our first existing service customers on board was our first milestone. And I think because of the way we built it, we very quickly got a lot of interest. There was a lot of people asking for something better than PDF floor plans. So I was constantly in and out of London doing demos and being invited into various different offices and honing my skills of being able to demo properly and not having typos in the demo. And we won some really big customers very, very quickly. Almost one of our customers was about 50% of our revenue.
What did that feel like at the time? Was it like validation? Was it scary at all that now you had to deliver that stuff?
No, I don't think so, because we'd been doing it for a long time, and it's not so much the software side. The software side was a bit scary. The deliverable was less scary. I guess probably the ignorance of youth, I suppose.
Don't know what you
to
don't
some
know.
extent, exactly. But yeah, I always felt like we could deliver.
Yeah.
The biggest problem was before we kind of hit that next milestone was a challenge which completely sideswiped me. I thought that business was honesty and everyone was fighting for everybody else, and there was this camaraderie, and the reality was that as soon as you become successful, the more success, the bigger target on your back. So my first challenge of running a business was actually dealing with a company who had copied, and not like literally copied. So we looked at their code and they had our developer's name still in their code.
Wow.
And it was called out by one of our partners in the industry who had gone through exactly the same process with the same company. So I tried to sue them.
Can you protect against that? Could you protect against that then? Can you protect against that now?
Yeah. I think naively the first version of our platform wasn't that secure from a code perspective. From a data perspective, it was secure. But from a code perspective, it was fairly open code. I think we built it in Flash. So yeah, it wasn't that secure.
Never known for the most secure software on the planet, Flash.
No, that's right. But it was one of those things that overnight we saw this product that looked extremely similar to ours, and I get a phone call from our customer who's got 50%, well, provides 50% of our revenue, telling us that they're ending the contract for no particular reason, and turns out that they had gone to this company and asked them to actually build that piece of software for them.
Wow.
And they had just cut and paste and undercut us.
See, that's to me is even more unscrupulous, because you've built a piece of technology, you've won the business, that organization, that customer is very happy with it. It's not actually another technology provider or another competitor that's gone, well, that's a great idea, we're going to copy that. They have accepted to copy that, which in itself is questionable morals and things like that, but ultimately maybe they're just not seen before that what it was. I don't know, maybe they went in the events industry. We won't name names and things like that, but for a company that runs a business surviving off of the back of the goodwill and the fortune of suppliers and partners, to then do that feels very, very scandalous, to be honest with you.
It was, and I explored different options, and bearing in mind this is probably maybe a year in, we weren't really making big bucks at this point. It felt like it. I think I remember hitting our first 100,000 in revenue, and it felt massive. But when you kind of split that up between different people and your costs, but I investigated the option of going kind of no win, no fee, and they took on the case for about 5 minutes, realised that the company were based in India, and wrote them a letter anyway, strongly worded letter. They came back and said, oh no, we're a reseller for another Indian company, and I got the kind of realization from our solicitor that we could spend billions of pounds and never get anywhere. So my next goal was, how do we expose this? So I went to Mash Media, and they printed it. So I shouldn't say that.
No, it's fine. Mash Media have been and still are the go-to publication for the exhibition markets. Obviously, with that being your customer base, it makes total sense.
Yeah, and that they were great. they posted it front page, and it got the exposure that we needed to actually show people what was happening. We immediately got a phone call from that organizer to say, come in because you're dragging our name through the mud. And I think they probably overestimated who I was. And when I went in and told them kind of the impact it had on our business, I think they backed down. It's
a small industry to be seen as, especially if you've got a very well respected brand and a name in the market, to be acting like that can be more damaging than anything, right?
It can be, yeah, it can be. And I think that the realization for them was I actually could show them the code that had been copied. And for them, even if they had asked for this other company to copy, I don't think they thought that it was going to be quite so
copy and paste,
leaving our developer's name in it. So overcoming that, and that was a lesson learned for me, is don't try and go after big customers. So with FFAIR, I never went after, or haven't gone after a big customer, because what I wanted to have was lots of little blocks of business, and if one of those blocks happens to be pulled out, the building doesn't collapse.
Would you say that's your biggest, maybe there's two things I'm kind of assuming here as we come on to this next stage, but would you say that one of your biggest learning outcomes positively that you took away from that bad experience and from Showplans was how to then manage risk and scale a new company and in an effective way without putting all your eggs in one basket?
Yeah, I mean, that taught me a whole load of lessons.
Yeah.
One of them was obviously we re-platformed the system. We made it much more secure, uncopyable. The challenge with software is you can't copyright it. It's not like a book or a poem. You can patent it only if it's attached to something tangible.
Mm-hmm.
But there isn't anything tangible. So the only way to protect yourself is speed to market. And being known for that thing as fast as possible. Yeah. So yeah, a lot of lessons learned that immediately stopped me from being naive and thinking that everyone was on your side, because that's not the case in business. I think it's Phil Knight said, business is war without bullets. I think some people take it too literally.
Yeah. I think there's probably been a few bullets thrown as well at the same time.
definitely have. But it kind of made me go into starting FFAIR with eyes wide open, being a lot more secure. That was a big hit for us.
Yep.
Obviously losing half your revenue and then having to re-platform with almost nothing. For about 2 years, I paid myself about £400 a month if I was lucky.
Yeah.
And I think that, I don't know, when you're asking about successful entrepreneurs, there's a lot of people that fail because they're not willing to make sacrifices. They're not willing to kind of go through the tough times like that. And I think that's where I'm built slightly differently, is I'm willing to graft, and I'll keep pursuing, and I'll get bone, dog with a bone when it comes to kind of trying to be successful and make something work. There is still that element that's in me to fail fast.
Yeah.
So I think failing fast is a really important lesson. I think we'll probably come on to it later, but
I think you're right. Speed to market is often a big move. I was speaking in the previous episode with Matt Allen, and there was somebody, I can't remember who it was, and they were being asked, why are you so successful? And they said, because I just move quicker than my competition. By the time they've made their first move, I've made my 7th mistake, and I'm already working on the eighth version of something, and it's literally down to that. Some people haven't got the risk appetite for that, right? They want to aim for perfection before they get stuff out into the wild and get the feedback and all that kind of stuff.
Perfection prevents progress.
Absolutely, and I think that's right in software, and we've seen that through the events industry, that there is often a arms race sometimes to get to market, and some people have bigger budgets and they can take more visibility and more share and things. But I've said to many people about you, Adam, that I think what's also been the success of FFAIR to a degree is how well you're respected in the events industry and how much those relationships existed after Showplans, obviously leading into FFAIR, and that trust and everything that was there. Lots of people can build software and technology, and there's actually never been a better time to, with all the tools and technology out there to help you build.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean you can penetrate a market and sell a product to a new customer base just because you've got fancy software.
No, and I think a lot of it is identifying problems, not creating problems and solving a fake problem. I think that's always been something that I've been able to see as a problem and a solution to that problem. Even if someone else has come up with the solution, if I can see that it's not quite right and there's a small, often it is a tiny tweak to make something successful, because when we talk about FFAIR, there were people that built a marketplace previously, but it wasn't successful, and it wasn't successful, and I could see why it wasn't successful, but no one else could, and that was just because it didn't have the control of the organizer. So yeah, growing Showplans. So Showplans then kind of went into its next evolution. We rebuilt it. We started getting more customers on board. We started winning awards. And then I started employing more people, and taking that business to kind of that next level where it wasn't dependent on me. The business would still function when I wasn't there. And
at what point did that piece at the end start, do you think, in terms of the process of, were you approached or did you go to market? Because there's two different routes, isn't there? You can either build to sell or have that in mind at some point. You don't necessarily build from the outset to sell, but then you get to a point you're like, okay, this might make sense for us. Or was it an inbound approach and then you went through that process?
So this is an indication of how naive I was. I didn't go into building that business to sell.
Yeah.
It didn't even occur to me as an option. I was building that business to be successful and to be my business. So I think, obviously, a few awards and a few big customers, it got the attention of various different suppliers, and we got approached by GES, and I had a conversation, and it was a kind of enlightenment that, we've built something that people are interested in and might actually want. Yeah. But again, it wasn't really on my radar to sell it. I was just running it to grow. Not even running it to be profitable. That's the strange thing, which is kind of very different this time around. But I just wanted to grow it.
Yeah.
And then I get a phone call from Freeman. They wanted a demo to them, assuming that they just wanted to see it so they could potentially resell it or copy it. That was kind of in the back of my mind.
The guard's up at that point.
A little bit, definitely more guarded. So yeah, they sent one of their guys down to our office, which was next to a driving range near Fleet. A few mishit golf balls bouncing along the roof as we're chatting away. But there was definitely a shared vision of what floor plans could be alongside other operational tech. Yeah. And then nothing happened for a year. Nothing at all. No response, no conversation, and then get another phone call saying, really like it, really like what you've built. Let's have another conversation. Had another conversation, went up to their offices in Brighton, demoed to a wider team, everyone loved it. And then again, silence. Wow. Nothing going on. So, oh God, what's going on here? And then all of a sudden it all moved really quickly.
Do you think that time between is just, as an organisation of that size, things like this, go to a stage, sit there for a while, go to another stage, go to another person, and then it kind of moves along again to get the authorization to re-engage and things like that?
Partly that.
Yeah.
The way Freeman was they had the EMEA arm, but all of the decisions were being made from the US.
Got you.
So you kind of had this pipeline of information that was going up and down. The other element was that they were trying to acquire two businesses at the same time, and wanted to do them all at the same time. But it was an interesting time because I knew kind of from the second moment that they weren't interested in partnering, it was an acquisition. So I actually did more research into acquisitions and getting more opinions on what you should and shouldn't do, what the mistakes that people make. And one of the key mistakes was being focused more on the acquisition and the running of your business. You've almost got to forget or put to the back of your mind that someone's looking to acquire your business and run it to be successful. Yeah. And I kept drumming that into my co-founder, and bought the book, put it on his desk in the hope that he would also read it. And yeah, we just had to kind of think like that and get it to that point. And then, as I say, it all moved very quickly then. All of a sudden we had a phone call saying, we need you in London. We went back and forth to London, and then needed to make sure I found a really good solicitor. And these are all the kind of functional elements of selling your business. You need someone legal on your side. Yep. And the options are vast. I mean, I had a quote for, I think it worked out to be about 50% of the value of the sale, all the way down to a fixed cost of just a couple of grand. So obviously I went for the couple of grand option, but yeah, I think we very much lucked out with the person that we got on board. So from that kind of decision making, we came upon a number, and I think with any business, there's never it's always a number that is a compromise. There's no hard and fast rule to how you figure it out. You might get multipliers that are in the industry, but I kept having to remind them that I'm not looking to sell this business. You've got to kind of entice me into selling this business. So
you've put your blood, sweat, and tears. It's your baby at the end of the day, isn't it? Exactly. You're not going to hand it over. You've not had enough. You're not in trouble. Like you said, they've approached you. Needs to be exciting for it to make sense.
Yeah, exactly. And it is a negotiation. You're trying to get the number that you think is worth for that business. So, and also you've got to look back at the sacrifices as well, and not paying myself very well, not paying myself at all sometimes, and making sure that staff were always paid, and dipping into savings to do so. Those kind of sacrifices are worth something.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's a reason why big businesses don't want to build software, because there's a massive risk. So you're kind of passing that risk to someone else and kind of picking up before.
I think that's why also people often go, why are they paying so much for a business, or why are they paying 10x or 19x or whatever the valuation is that they come up to? It's because they've de-risked it all, and even then, even at the multiplier, it's still probably more cost effective than them going into spending the years, the blood, the sweat and tears, the hiring the team, getting it wrong, all that kind of stuff. It's not actually generally a bad price for them to acquire at that price.
No, it's not. And it was, I'd imagine from Freeman's perspective, it was a fairly uncomplicated sale because it was bootstrapped. Yeah. There were no external investors, and all they had to deal with was two daft brushes, and that was it really. But they were great. I mean, I enjoyed that whole process. They made it enjoyable.
Would you have any? You've mentioned lawyering up, getting good lawyers, doing your due diligence, focusing on the business rather than getting wrapped up in the potential upside, the Ferraris, the Lambos, or whatever came from it. Is there any other advice you would give any other organisation that either gets approached or is in that process of exiting? Maybe it's the management buyout piece, maybe it's after. What do you do after you're all done? That's always a question for me. What do you do after the day that you don't do anything more?
So I think I would say get your number in mind. What's the absolute minimum that you would sell your business for, and don't go below it. I had a number in my mind which was the hard and fast of it. I obviously tried to get more than that, and in the end we worked on the basis of an earnout because we couldn't quite meet that number. So the advice that I would say is, even if it's an earnout, that first part of the payment needs to be your minimum. It has to be your minimum, because the earnout can be impacted by anyone, anything, and the reality is that business will change after you've joined. So even with the best will in the world, and the people that are telling you and honestly telling you that they want to make you a success, they might not be there in a year's time. And that was a reality for me as well. So making sure you know that, sticking to your guns, and I think part of that negotiation process as well is kind of making sure that you understand the value of your business, and you can communicate that well with them, because they're the ones that are going to be selling it. And you've also got to have empathy from their side as well. They're taking a massive risk on buying something. They clearly respect you as a company, you as an owner and a founder, so that's worth something as well. I never wanted to get into this kind of us and them situation. So throughout that process they were brilliant. And also, depending on who they are, it was an potentially overwhelming situation to go into. So when we were selling, we went into London, I think it's Solicitor's Row or something they call it, where you've got the kind of big 10, and we obviously took our £2,000 solicitor in with us, and not intimidated in the slightest. But we were quite lucky in that respect. But I think not being overwhelmed by that sort of stuff. This was a big lawyer, a big city office, loads of people around the table, and even at the final minute of the negotiation, I was willing
to walk away.
It was as simple as we hadn't cleared our bank account, and because we hadn't cleared the bank account, it was supposed to be Freeman.
Could you just elaborate on what clearing the bank account means for anybody that might not necessarily be clear on that? Does that mean like taking all the money out? Does it, what is clearing the bank account out?
So basically your profits. And this was, again, probably a naivety thing. That would have been our money, but as soon as the business is bought by the acquirer, it's their money.
And they don't want to pay an X multiple on the profit that's already in the business as well, right?
So it kind of came down to kind of them saying, well, that's our money now. So I quickly got on the mobile bank and took it out and took that out of the equation.
We'll think about the tax later.
Love to check whether I can actually tell you all this. I'm sure it's fine.
I'm sure it's fine.
But that's also the other thing, is don't be overwhelmed by the position you're in. And I think that's probably another thing that I'm okay with. Some people much smarter are overwhelmed by situations like that, where I kind of roll with the punches a little bit,
and I think that's where, that's also where seek the advice of other people that have been through that process as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
What can you tell me that I don't know that I should be prepared for? There's a fine line between that, because if somebody's had a bad experience, then you don't want to be, that's automatically going to be your experience, but it's worthwhile having somebody's warts and all, and like, this worked really well, this was a crapper, be careful on this. Thinking about the term sheet before we move back onto the success story that is FFAIR, because I really want to focus on that as well. You mentioned term sheet and obviously things like earnouts, milestones, your side of the money and all that kind of stuff. I've never heard of this, and it's probably unpractical, but could you, I understand that anything can be put in a term sheet as long as it's agreed. Do you think you could put things in, like you mentioned that somebody who brought you in and was your champion could then not be within the business in a year's time? Could you put something in a term sheet that said, well, if that person exits the business within my earnout, I get everything up front?
You could. Yeah. I mean, it's all a negotiation. You're not negotiating on just the number, you're negotiating on the terms. And I mean, if I was to sell the business next time, I'd make sure that there were more terms in that in that agreement.
We need a GPT for term negotiation that we can all ask it. What do I do with this? What should I ask for?
I think it's so nuanced that even ChatGPT would struggle. And we went through so many scenarios with our solicitor. What happens in this situation? What happens in that situation? And almost none of them came to fruition, but something else did.
Interesting.
So yeah, you've got to have a real crystal ball to be able to see what would happen. But
you're always going to be in the slightly weaker position, because this won't be Freeman or another company's first rodeo, right? Generally,
no. So generally, I think there'd been 5 other acquisitions.
They've got a better crystal ball than you have in that situation. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I hadn't ever heard of an earnout. It was Freeman that proposed it. So there's this thing called an earnout, and it was a very popular thing at the time with acquisitions. Yeah. So
it's a protective thing for them, at the very least. It keeps you engaged, it keeps you in board. You're working together for the growth. They kind of start to earn some of their investment back on the growth of it. So there's value there. Cut and dry, handover, job done scenarios are even rare. And the big risks aren't there.
It is a big risk. Yeah. But the mechanics of an earnout, I think, are good.
Yeah.
I think, and it was done in good faith, and I think the people that kind of offered that earnout wanted us to hit that earnout, because they would have succeeded as well from it. So I don't have anything against earnouts, but I would definitely have some more terms and definitely have some scenarios mapped out.
Do you think that, looking back, that was one of the things that you would love to have learnt more about or know more about earlier in the journey, or do you not think you can do that until you've gone through that experience because of the nuance and stuff that you mentioned before?
I don't know. I don't try and know too much. I don't try and think about the blue sky and what might or might not happen. It's almost like perfection. You're trying to know everything, and that's just going to slow you down.
Paralysis.
So for me, I just wanted to. I learned as quickly as I possibly could when I needed to.
Yeah.
And there's no way I would have been able to foresee what was going to happen. So it was a case of protecting myself from what I knew. And what I didn't know, I would find out.
Well, that brings us on, I guess, to the birth of FAIR. First of all, I guess we need to explain why FAIR is spelt with 2 Fs. It's another spelling mistake?
Not a spelling mistake this time. Definitely not. So
he says it really was. He's just like playing it off now. So he's incorporated. It's done. It's sticking.
Either that or Welsh people spell a lot wrong. I guess that could be the other option. But no, it's so the birth of the idea for FAIR was a marketplace. And when we were bouncing names around, we were doing that typical thing. Oh, what's this in Latin? Latin. What's the Greek god of this? And
it's so edgy and cool.
Exactly. Nothing really came out. And I thought, well, I wonder what this is in Welsh. What's market in Welsh? So it then came out as FAIR, spelled with a double F, pronounced V in Welsh.
Trade shows are also known as trade fairs.
We wanted to be fair.
Fair and equitable.
And offer a fair kind of platform for everybody. And it was kind of one of those moments like, yeah, this is good. This really works. Good on Welsh language. There we go. And because I was born in Wales as well, it kind of felt like it fitted on so many different levels.
Meant to be kind of scenario, right?
The problem is lots of people call it affair now. And that's not what we're trying to promote.
I'm having an affair.
Yeah, we're not definitely not promoting affairs. So I'm going to have to do more to nip that in the bud.
Maybe you could spin that April Fool's it or something like that. There might be some tongue-in joke thing.
Maybe. So yeah, that was kind of how it was born. My initial frustration was ordering lots of services from lots of different suppliers and it taking forever and varying levels of experience, and then that was kind of the starting point, and I knew something was wrong in that model. So it's one of those things when I think lots of people have ideas of businesses and products that they're going to release, and often people don't action them. So like this is all going on whilst I'm still at Freeman, kind of in my mind thinking, well, if I do go, what would I build?
So the birth of FFAIR Adult was already in the process in your mind, even during the earnout. It wasn't like I'm taking a break, a ha moment hit you, and then off you went. It was always something you were working.
No, and I think entrepreneurs are always thinking of ideas. There's always maybe 4 or 5 things going on in your mind, and it's kind of picking the one, and you kind of play around with what might happen if you release that idea. And
it's the battle in itself, isn't it, mate? Really, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Like, which direction do you go? What do you put your effort into? What's the good idea?
This is it. And I had 2. I think I had 2 ideas at the time, and when I left Freeman, it was another crisis. It was lockdown.
Yeah.
So going into lockdown, it was an opportunity, and I started building 2 products, and quite quickly realised that lockdown wasn't going to be a couple of months; it was going to be almost a year. So I then edged my bets and parked one and moved on to the other one and focused on that. But it's one of those things. You get your ideas either when you're on a couch or in the shower or going for a run. Mine's always kind of in the shower, but
mine seems to be in the gym.
Is it in the gym?
In between sets and stuff like that, and then I'm like that person that's on the phone and that somebody else is looking at you going like, how long are you going to be stood there? Because I'm like trying to get the thought down on my phone.
That's hilarious. So my showers tend to take about 45 minutes, and our electricity bills are astronomical.
But you're super clean. That's the positive side. There's a silver lining.
There's no smells coming off. But there was something niggling me with the concept of FFAIR. There was something that didn't quite work, and it was the whole marketing of it. If we build a marketplace, yes, it's a better experience, but how the hell are we going to get exhibitors to it? Why are we going to get exhibitors that are exhibiting at X show to visit our website to buy what they need for that show? And that, to me, was...
And there are other organisations out there, we won't name the names, but there are other organisations out there that have created those marketplaces on that basis, that they're leveraging SEO and other things and search and things like that to try and get that, or even slightly, what I would say, non-transparent positioning on how closely they're associated with the shows and stuff like that.
Yeah, mass emails telling you that that's where you order your stuff. And for me, I didn't want to go down that route. I wanted the organizer to be in control still, so it would still be driven by the organizer. They'd still be able to choose their suppliers and their preferred suppliers. But the missing piece for me was the manual, because if we actually add a manual to our platform, we then don't have to market it. People are visiting the manual because they need to submit their risk assessment, stand designs, insurances, and you're essentially bringing everyone to the shop.
And you're also getting them at the point that they are thinking about what they're doing with the event.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that was kind of my aha moment.
Smart.
And then from that point on, that gave me the confidence to drop the other idea and just focus on this.
Just before the other idea disappears into the ether, is that just an idea on the back burner, or is that dead and done because this is now in the foray?
It's 4 years on, so the idea has already come to market through other people, and that's the kind of nature of the game.
Yeah.
If you have an idea, you've got to act on it before someone else does.
Yeah.
And I don't think I'm the only one that kind of has these ideas. There's other people that see them, and I think the other idea was
back to it. So some people just execute on them, or execute on them better, or something like that, don't they?
Yeah, this is it. And it was an obvious idea. It was an obvious thing that was required, and so obvious that other people do it.
Yeah.
The difference with FFAIR is not everyone's exposed to that operational level. So you don't have 1,000 people seeing that problem and 10 people actually coming up with a solution to it. There's probably only 100, and that means only one person comes up with the idea.
And I'm going to say this with every best goodwill and intention, Adam. You're not solving what I would class as the sexy problem, right?
No, never
but
have.
you are solving a problem that is there for every organizer and every exhibitor. And I often say to people, when they're looking at their own technology, and I'm advising them on like, what should we get in? What's the new thing? What's the AI thing? I'm like, well, have you got your operations sorted? Are you happy with how data flows through your systems? Have you got your CRM system in a good place? Because if you haven't got all of that nailed, why are you looking for the shiny object?
Yeah, I'm always skeptical of things like this, and it seems to be a reoccurring theme in events. I mean, when I launched Showplans, it was around the same time as mobile apps, and we built a mobile app, but it was something that got so much funding that we were quickly overtaken by Genie
Double
Connect.
Dutch.
Genie Connect. So
yeah.
even the phase before that kind of. So yeah, we came up with something. I would say that we were probably the first to market with a mobile app, but yeah, very, very quickly got overtaken because it was a new shiny thing, and apps were highly investable.
Yeah.
So we just kind of knew our place, stepped back, and just focused on the floor plan element. But I think it's the same with AI. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think AI is going to be an incredible game changer for tech and event tech specifically. But I would just...
It's not a product in and itself, is it?
No. And I would kind of say be cautious about companies that are experts in AI, because it's still in its infancy. No one's really an expert apart from the people that create it in the first place.
Let's be honest, we can look at recent news of Sam Altman and the trials and tribulations that they're going through. Google's hot on their tail with a lot bigger infrastructure and a lot bigger. So while somebody might be a market leader for a moment, it doesn't mean that they're going to be forever, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to have a smooth run of it either. So
and I also think that this is AI in its infancy. If you take the same kind of Moore's law to chips, it's going to become twice as intelligent at half the cost. So it's accelerated incredibly fast over the last year. Crikey, what's it going to be in 5 years' time? And I think we'll struggle to keep up with the possibilities of it. And the events industry has never been kind of at the forefront of technology, I don't think.
No, we've been an adopter.
Yeah.
We've been an adopter of existing or other technologies and processes. In fact, we've been very outward looking, and then we've adopted that and solved basic needs and problems as far as I can see.
I'd agree with that. And a lot of companies that come into the event tech world are quickly put off it, because what works in the outside world no longer doesn't really work that well in events. And the SaaS model particularly, you build a SaaS model, you can scale it and you can grow it and you get millions of customers. As soon as you bring that into an organizer kind of world, all of a sudden that's not good enough. You need the service side on it as well, and you can't scale with the service side to the level.
How many times have we both said this industry should really be software and a service rather than software as a service?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
In terms of how you've built FFAIR, would you say you've built it differently with a different vision? And if you have, what is different about it? And is that even peering into the future in terms of the future developments and roadmaps? You mentioned profit. You built it this time with profit in mind. I think that was really interesting as well.
Well, I think there's so many learnings throughout that time, and actually learning practically and taking everything I've learned previously into this. I've taken a very different approach. So to me, I kind of hold Scrum and Agile methodologies very, very closely to the way I run the business.
Would you explain what a Scrum methodology is to anybody that's not familiar, because we're not necessarily just speaking to technology people?
True. So Agile, and people throw the word Agile around and it pisses me off.
Sounds like an agency term. Agile is.
It is. It basically is just an excuse for being indecisive. But it's not. In reality, what it is you value learning more than anything else, and failure isn't seen as a negative. Yeah. It's an opportunity to learn something. So with Scrum, it's a very defined team. It's releasing feature updates in a set period. So for us, we have 3 weekly sprints. So we decide what we're going to build before we refine it. We put it into a sprint, we release it, we find out whether it worked, enhance it. So
and that sounds to me like that's even better for the customer, because every 3 weeks they know there's something that might improve the platform and make it better for them on a regular basis, rather than, well, nothing's changed with this thing in like 12 months, 18 months.
And the thing is, again, there's different methodologies, and there used to be this kind of approach of, let's plan everything to the nth degree. We've got a project that's going to take us 1.5 years, and then 1.5 years later you release the thing and you find out it's all moved on. The whole industry's moved on, and what you spent 1.5 years planning and executing is no longer relevant. So for us, if lockdown hadn't got in the way, we would have gone from nothing to a minimum viable product that was sellable within 2 months. We had a viable product that was better than most things on the market, not where we kind of foresaw it going, but good enough and better than a lot.
Yeah.
So it kind of, that is something I hold dearly to developing, and that's not something I even knew about when I started. I often think whether, if I knew what I knew now when I started Showplans, whether I'd have actually done it.
I said that to my business partner about Event Tech Live. If we'd have realised, we probably never would have done it in the first place. The ignorance sometimes is the bliss, right? It's just like, oh, we don't know what we don't know. Going
blind and see what happens. And I don't know. I honestly don't know whether I'd have done it. But that's very important. I think building this business, knowing that an end goal might be to sell it.
Yeah.
I think that's a difference. So when I'm building this business, it's not at the forefront of my mind by any means. I'm building this business to be a successful business for me, and something that I can own for however long. And if someone comes along and wants to buy it, great. But it's knowing that is an option is key.
Yeah.
I've taken a very different approach this time around by hiring much slower and hiring much more senior, because looking back, I hired as kind of efficiently as I possibly could. So I was hiring juniors and expecting them to do a senior role and be responsible for things that I shouldn't have been. So this time around, I've taken more on myself for longer to facilitate enough funds to actually hire someone much more experienced, and when they do come on board, it's much easier.
I think that's smart.
Yeah, you're all pulling in the right direction. You've all got experience of kind of being in a business, and I think
it's got to be more cost effective, right?
Yeah,
because not from a salary perspective and things like that, but from the time that you then have to invest with that person for them to achieve what you actually set out for them to achieve. Yeah. There's autonomy, there's self-motivation, all those kinds of things. You don't need to be like, what do I do next? What am I doing next? Or even chase them for what they've done and things like that, right?
They say hire people that are better than you at doing that job, and that's what I've done this time.
Yeah.
Whereas before it was, I sometimes feel guilty because I kind of put people in roles where it was too big for them, and it required me to kind of spend more time teaching and coaching than actually running the business. So definitely that's a major thing this time around. I think as well, kind of knowing that there is a target on your back, and I feel it less now. Weirdly, it should be the bigger, more success, the bigger the target. But I think there's also this window of opportunity for people that don't want you to succeed to have a chance of crushing you. And obviously, for the first year of launching FFAIR, I felt that a lot.
You're most vulnerable at those early stages because you've not really super delivered the technology into a lot of places. There's a lot of customer up, and you went after the smaller ones, so the big boys haven't transitioned or anything like that at that point. And there's some organizations out there with fairly deep pockets, and they could go, that's a really good idea, let's dev that super quickly, go to market with it. But again, I think because you came into the market having all of those relationships and that experience and that network and that respect and that trust, I would probably say they didn't even have a year, mate. They probably had a couple of months, if I'm honest.
Possibly.
I think it shows today because you've just recently released news that was it 150%, 15% growth?
150 this year.
150, sorry, yeah.
And
I got
that's
it right
off the back of 183 the year before.
Not many companies grow that fast in the industry. They might raise a lot of money, but they don't necessarily have actual growth that reflects those figures, unless they've gone from £1 to £2 or something daft like that. Yeah. But that's not the case here.
No, and we were break even after 9 months.
Yeah.
But we're lean. We don't have an office. We work remote, and what I could do, I did. There were certain things that I learned from last time with Showplans. I used to do the accounts just because I wanted to learn how it functioned. And this time around, it's like, no, that's not my skill set. Pass it over to someone that's actually good at it. But I did want to learn. I wanted to understand it. Getting to profitability as quickly as possible was really important because I was obviously funding it. So I needed to kind of make sure that my own personal finances, and I didn't lose my house and all that important stuff, which was definitely a possibility. It was a possibility.
I think you've come into the market and you've produced what I think is one of the most useful piece of operational tech out there, a wholly underfunded part of the events industry, under-focused part of the events industry. Operations are the bloodline of events being delivered. I won't mention the name, but I was speaking to somebody in Clarion, huge tech advocate, but constantly frustrated that there is budget, but actually there's little support in the time they're allowed to go and actually investigate and implement technology. Looking as my final question, what does the next 3 to 5 years look like for FFAIR? That's quite a long scope. That's quite far out actually in your journey, but how are you going to develop the platform? Where is the focus going to be? Are there any other things on the horizon which might come into play that you can talk about or not talk about? What does that look like to you from a marketplace perspective?
I will continue doing what we're doing to some extent, which is listening to our customers. So something that I implemented very early on was a customer feedback board. So we're learning firsthand from the people at coalface what's working, what they would like to enhance, and it also layers in a voting system. So
and did that feedback come in naturally, or was it something you had to encourage?
Comes in naturally.
Yeah. People like to kick off.
The way we've done it, it's part of our product.
Yeah.
So it's very easy to provide feedback. Yeah. So the ideas that are coming now are from the people that are using it, and often what we try and do is get them to tell us the problem, not the solution. They can add the solution on there, but what we typically do is kind of see the problem and find a way of solving it. And often you might have 3 or 4 ideas come in and you can solve with one feature.
Interesting.
So that's kind of important. And also the voting system means that those wacky ideas that the client thinks is an amazing idea and actually it's not that great stays down, no one votes on it, and we've got a reason to say no, sorry, not yet.
Can I have a radio check in and out system, please?
Like wild stuff like that. So I think that's important for me, is to keep listening.
Yeah. It's a customer built platform at that point then, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. And fair credit to FFAIR is probably very heavily on our customers' feedback to date. Last year we developed 270 features that were all customer requests.
And is that how you decide what features are now built fully from the roadmap perspective? I'm sure you've got lots of your own ideas. I'm sure your team has lots of your own ideas, but do you prioritize customer feedback over all of that other stuff?
It varies.
Okay.
Because there's always phases.
Yeah.
So for right now, we're focusing a little bit more on our internal requirements. So it's about replatforming it and making it faster, because we're at a point where if we grow more, we're going to need a much more efficient back end, and it needs to be able to kind of scale to that next level.
How do you make the decision on the right time to do that stuff?
Before you hit it.
Yeah.
That's ultimately what it is.
Before you hit the ceiling.
And I think And we've got some very, very smart developers who know kind of what that is and how far away that might be. So for us,
that's good.
Our rate of growth now, I was told 2 years, and my response was, well, let's re-platform now because it's going to take us 6 months or whatever it is. So soon as you can, you should.
And I think that's the other thing, that the perception of the events industry from an external perspective when you're not on the tech side is, oh, you've built it, that's job done.
Oh yeah. There is no finished product, and I think a lot of people can't cope with that.
Yeah.
Especially in software, it's forever changing. So this time last year, it was probably an 80-20 split. 80% of features were developed for the customer. 2 months ago, it was probably 50-50, and now it's probably a 60-40 split in favor of us. But we always want to have kind of feature requests coming from customers floating through. What else? Can't ignore AI. So we are.
You've just released a survey right on this, looking at what kind of features and things, again, customer facing, like what would you want, what would be helpful, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and also we're working with a partner. It's for me, I would rather work with an expert externally to kind of understand this industry. Or much the same as the reason why we use Stripe is because I don't want to spend all my time learning about PCI compliance and payments and international laws, and
not worth it.
There's someone else that's better at it. So going to an expert and seeing what's possible with our platform, and there's some really cool stuff. I mean, beyond chatbots and feeding information to people in much easier ways, being able to have a conversation with a WhatsApp channel to actually find out what time openings are, and uploading your insurance certificate to that chat and it completing tasks for you. That's kind of some of the stuff that we're discussing.
Will that stay exhibitor focusing? Because that suggests to me that there's then that opportunity for a visitor facing element to that. You're using the same system to upload the similar information, but visitor facing, that then visitors can engage with and get, or the team get away from all of those mundane, repetitive questions of like, it's literally on the website, but somebody's emailed us.
Yeah. I mean, I strongly believe that we can take away all emails.
That's a bold statement, mate.
And that's not day one.
Yeah.
But the benefit of AI is how quickly it learns. If you can teach AI and it never forgets, then why would you ever need to email back? Because the AI is going to handle it because you've told it what the answer was previously. So I do think there'll be a point where emails get cut out, and we've already cut emails by over 60%.
Is that something you promote? Because I've never seen that as a stat from you guys.
No, it's very early days. So this is the stuff that we're talking to with our AI partner, and kind of understanding what's possible. Because I don't just want to find the easiest thing just so we can say, oh, we've got AI in our product.
Yeah. I
want to actually come up with something that's going to have an outcome. And you mentioned it earlier, ops are time poor. They're the ones that don't have the time. They're the ones that are working till 8 o'clock. They're the ones that probably have the smaller budget in the mix of things, because
doesn't bring revenue and it doesn't bring visitors.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So if we can cut down or give back time to ops, there's a lot of stuff that ops people can do to actually enhance the show. They can focus on proactive enhancements, not reactive stuff.
Yeah.
Like, what's the weight limit of the VE door that I can drive through? It's the sort of stuff we're dealing with.
Do you ever see yourself getting in, because you had experienced this, not necessarily this was what you did, but your technology at Showplans was used for this process, the rebook process, the re-onboarding of exhibitors, confirming those sales prior to the event, which most trade show organisers do start a campaign prior to the event to try and secure some exhibitors early, then on site, then early post-show, because you've got people kind of in that bit of that ecosystem where, again, they're thinking about what they're doing this year, so could they be thinking about what they're doing next year as well, or is that out of your wheelhouse and you're not interested in getting involved in that?
It's an obvious progression.
Yeah.
Because it's in the ops space.
Yep.
As a user journey, how good would it be to buy your stand, get access to the portal, complete all of your requirements, and buy what you need for your space. It's a seamless journey for the exhibitor. The challenge for me and kind of the back and forth is, do I want to split my focus? Don't really mind. There's capacity. For me, I maybe just take longer showers. But I think for this one, where I've tried to not get investment with FFAIR, and I've tried to get smart money in, but not really VC or big investments. I think if I was to go into that space, it would require investment. And that's an area that I've not really gone into. I've never had VCs judging what's going on in the business and kind of wanting that insight.
Because often they also not necessarily knowing the nuances of the events industry. They're looking at the model from the way that it works for VCs on 90% of other investments and the way that they scale and then get their timescales of get their money. You almost need, like you say, smart money, which is probably more people who understand the market and the industry and things like that, right?
Yeah, and how quickly it will grow. And it's one of those, and I keep getting pulled into it because I'm known for it.
Yeah.
And when someone has a bad experience with their current floor plan provider, the first person they bloody call is me, and they
come on,
want to
sort it out.
Yeah, exactly. And it's at some point I'll fold.
Would you rather build than acquire?
I don't think we're quite in a position to acquire. I think it's possible that we could financially. I think probably not possible from a resource perspective, because I think
it's got to service it as well.
You've obviously got to service it. You've got to have the due diligence to actually understand whether that's a scalable solution. And I think out of the floor plan companies that are there now, although some of them are very good, I think the newest tech stack is still 7 years old. So potentially what's possible with a newer tech stack is far greater, and the ceiling that you could get to by building is much higher.
And like you said, we're actually at such an early stage with AI. Things have changed so much in the next year. It's going to be really interesting to me to see what kind of code bases and tech stacks and things like that come out with the next couple of years. And how quickly you'll be able to build on those. So not to get into all the geeky stuff of the technical tech stacks and databases and React code and all that kind of stuff, but you almost kind of want to time it right so you're not building on legacy, you're building on the next generation of stuff.
I think it's going to evolve quickly, but for me it's less about the tech stack and actually the end product. And I think I've made 3 references to Nike already, but I'm going to make one more. Obviously their slogan is,
if anybody can't see, you've got a pair of kick-ass Nike Air Max 90s on here.
Just do it. It is a great way to kind of thing. So just do it. When I started the business, that was kind of, I've got to just commit to doing it. But I think the other thing, if I do this, just do it better. I think sometimes with a floor plan system, yes, you can compete, you can copy, you can go out there and deliver something that's to the same level. I definitely don't mean copy, but you can release something that is as good as others. But if I do it, you want to do it better. And that can mean many things.
Awesome, mate. Well, thank you very much for coming on and sharing your story, because I think there's lots of people that obviously know your story and are close to it, probably not in as much detail as we've got into today. And the Event Tech Talk Show is always about talking about the use of technology, but also talking about shining the other light on it, the side of it which many people don't think about, which is how technology is built, how it's utilized, having a deeper understanding of what's possible. Expectations can often be wildly unrealistic from a cost perspective, from a time perspective, from the innovation, where's the innovation in the industry kind of arguments and all this kind of stuff. So I think this has been, for me personally, a really interesting founder-led story of successful business, another successful business, but solving real problems and real challenges, which is what we want from a technology perspective. Thank you for coming on today. For anybody who listened or watched us today, please connect up with Adam. Go and check FFAIR out if you're not already familiar with the platform. give us a share on LinkedIn, give us a like, and we'll see you in the next episode.